I'm very happy to be standing in the Lath House at the JC Raulston Arboretum in Raleigh, North Carolina. And in here, we're going to find things that probably we cannot even acquire for our home garden. And I want you to think of this as we start. We're about to enter what could be like an art museum. And Greg, I know that you're the Director of Horticulture, and you can give us the history behind the richness of where we're standing and history, even back to the original man who started this and some of his plants.
Yeah, welcome. Glad to have y'all here. Glad that it's a little bit overcast and cool. It's been a really fast and frivolous spring, but we're at the JC Raulston Arboretum, and the Arboretum started about 1976. JC came from Oklahoma to begin teaching here, and they gave him this 10 acres to kind of plant things and use as a demonstration arboretum for students. JC was very involved with a mission of kind of reinventing what the nursery industry was doing. He was all about diversity, and at the time that he came here, there wasn't a lot of diversity in the nursery world, so he wanted to change that. And the best way to change that was to go abroad and bring plants in. So he spent a lot of time in Asia and other places looking for things that would be diverse and would be good landscape plants for homeowners and for the nursery trade in North Carolina and abroad. Tied into that history, they built this Lath House a number of years ago. It was redone in 2010. We're in the process now of redoing it. But the idea behind this was, you think of a Lath House as a shade structure. Well, this was designed with the laths so that it would allow minimal sun at different times of the day.
Right.
So that things would grow with a little bit of protection. It's also a good area for a temperature inversion. So if we've got tender things, we can put them and tuck them in here, and the temperature is going to be a little bit warmer than it would be outside of here, because that lath is creating a bit of an inversion. You are dead on with your analogy of an art gallery. An arboretum, by definition, is a museum of plants, a museum of trees, and we're a modern arboretum. We have trees and shrubs, herbaceous things, bulbs. There are things here that, in the spirit of JC, Mark, the director, and myself both have traveled abroad and naturally to collect plants. So things that we have collected, we'll grow them on, and we'll tuck them in here so we can kind of evaluate them. The plant right behind you is a lilac Daphne ginkwa. Very unusual color for a Daphne, and has a little bit of fragrance, not what you would think of with traditional Daphne.
It's good, though.
It's good.
It's sweet.
And we have propagated that, and we use this in some of our plant sales and our auctions and things like that, and we've shared it with other interested nurserymen. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on here. It's for pleasure and to walk through and get ideas and enjoy being in nature and plants, but we're evaluating pretty much everything that you see all the way through the garden to see how they're going to perform as landscape plants.
So you're the curator of this art gallery in here, so
to speak.
This is certainly beautiful next door.
Yeah, didn't have to go far.
No.
And another example of something that's kind of unusual, this is a rhodolea. It's related to witch hazel, and if you look at the flower closely, you can kind of see that relation. But a pretty unusual plant. You see this growing in gardens in the Pacific Northwest. The first place I ever saw it was in Portland. And this is an Asian selection, Takashiki, and I'm butchering that name, but it's typically a very bright red flower, and this one is as you can see, a light pink. Very tender, gets burnt very easily by our crazy swings in temperature, and you don't get a good bloom like this because it was so mild this winter. This thing has really been blooming its head off for a number of weeks. The red one I like a little bit better. The flower is just more saturated and stands out, but this is really unusual and pretty, and happenstance that it goes well with the lilac. I think it pulls the colors out of both of those.
It's delicate and pretty. Okay. This sort of reminds me of a little bit of sunshine on a cloudy day.
We need that today.
Yes.
Since we were talking about Daphnes, this is what most people think about when you say the word Daphne. This is Daphne odora. This is a Japanese cultivar called Mehima, and was covered with the most fragrant flowers that The Japanese garden borders this. You'd come in the Japanese garden and you could smell this, and it would pull people in. And the entrance to the Lath House, the same thing. The fragrance just wafted all the way through here. So this is also very typical in what they look like from a form perspective. A nice kind of round globe with this really, really pretty variegated foliage. You can see that it's done flowering. I think I pulled the last one off for us to smell.
Yes.
And you can see the new growth coming. It's green, but it'll take on those yellow edges as it matures. We've not pruned this. It maintains that shape. We'd like to recommend this because of that fragrance. We like things that have multiple seasons of interest. You have this evergreen color all through the growing seasons and the winter, and then you had that fragrance in the late winter, early spring. So it checks that box for us. And Mahonias have been looked at for a long time to be a good plant for the landscape and for the nursery trade. This is Mahonia. It's a cultivar called Skylark. You can see the pretty flowers right now. It's a much smaller leaf than most people think of when they think of Mahonias. It's not nice to touch, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But again, the thing I like about this is multiple season of interest. You have a nice evergreen, broadleaf evergreen shrub, kind of low growing. You have a really nice green shiny leaf on it, and in the spring, slightly fragrant flowers, really bright yellow color that brightens up kind of a dark corner. And this is one of those plants that's considered kind of low maintenance. It doesn't need a lot of care. Good soil drainage, moderate pH, more in the acid range. But there's a lot of work that NC State has done, and some of our plant breeders looking at different species of Mahonias and doing some breeding work with those to find good ones for the landscape. We talked about the Oregon grape holly, and there's some other ones that can be a little bit aggressive, not as nice, coarser texture, and those are the things that we're looking at, are ones that aren't invasive, ones that have nicer texture and are more friendly in the landscape.
It has one other attribute. They bloom so early, it's some of the first food for the bees. Exactly.
That's a good point. So the tall plant there is a camellia, and it's a species camellia. We're lucky to have some local nursery folk here that do a lot of work with camellias and have been benefited from that by getting some of them. Typically, the species camellias have pretty simple flowers, but I like that because, as you can see, this thing is absolutely loaded with buds. And in another couple days, it's going to pop open. These start out kind of a rosy color and kind of fade to white, but I just love that lacy appearance. I love all the flowers that it's going to have on it, and it fits kind of nicely in there. And then scaling down to the ground level, we've got several different types of ferns here. Polystichums, there's some Japanese painted ferns, there's some rhodoleuas in here, lots of different types of Ophiopogon, the mondo grass.
I love that.
That's a plant that we have a very strong interest here at the JC Raulston Arboretum. There's a lot of different species that are found all over the world, from dwarf ones like this to really tall ones, and they're a really, really good landscape plant. So we have a lot of those planted in here. The ground cover with the broader leaf is a type of Anicera, a honeysuckle, and it just kind of meanders down and is taking advantage of the stones that are in here. Some maidenhair ferns back in the back. Some Solomon seal that have just started to come up. I came through here Monday, and those hadn't even opened up yet. But with our warm temperature, they've already started to kind of bust loose. We have a lot of Akubas here.
That's unusual there.
It is. I'm always joking with Mark, the director. He has an inordinate fondness for all Akuba, and I'm slowly coming to appreciate them and like them a lot more. So we're looking at Japanese maple, and one of the interesting things that I first learned when I started here over a year ago is that this is the image that's our logo. It's a Japanese maple leaf. But this is something that JC was very interested in, and was using this as a good example from a diversity standpoint, and also a good plant to use and to share. And when he was planting the Arboretum, he wanted there to be a Japanese maple at any place that you stop to look in the garden. So us just standing here now, we're looking at one right now. Behind us, there's one over here to the left. There's one directly behind us going out to the Japanese garden. There's one over there in the corner.
Yes.
They're scattered all through the Arboretum. And I find myself now, whether I'm with a group doing a tour or even by myself, I'll stop and take a minute and look and see where they are in the garden so that I can remember that and just kind of relive that really interesting story and history of him and his impact on the garden and on us as we walk through the garden.
Yes.
I love those kinds of stories that horticulture and gardening has.
I found that the Epimedium is a collection of plants that are relatively unknown with some people.
They are, and it's unfortunate because it's a really good garden plant. It's one of the few things that you can almost say you can plant it and forget about it. Mm-hmm. They don't require a lot of care. They thrive on tough love and less than hospitable situations. This is a species one from Asia. Tony at Plant Delights has done a lot of breeding work on these and has a lot of different cultivars and species. Barrenwort is one of the common names of it. It typically, it's herbaceous, it'll die back. This one's a little bit, has a little bit of a thicker leaf, so it's almost tardily deciduous. It drops its leaves a little bit later than some of the other ones. But the flowers are typically yellow. This one is white, which I like a lot. And I like the bigger texture of that. The leaf has a lot of interest with, it's got a little bit of red blotchiness in it and the serrated edges, but a really, really good kind of dry shade plant that I think more people should be looking at this particular genus for their garden.
As I've been standing here with you, there's a fragrance that's just sort of coming through occasionally, and it's very sweet. And you think that behind us could be
I think that's the culprit. We have a really good collection of magnolias here at the JC Raulston Arboretum. We're a part of a bigger garden conglomerate that has collections, and ours is recognized in that group. This is Magnolia Eternal Spring. It's an evergreen Asian magnolia. This was developed by David Parks at Camellia Forest. He's got a great big one in his yard, and I think they sell this. But I hate to keep saying this is a favorite, but this has been a long time favorite of mine because it blooms for such an incredibly long time. This has literally been blooming for weeks for us.
I do thank you that you've taken time and come through here and explain to us some things that are just not out there on the market for the home garden. And I appreciate what you've shown us and told us.
Well, thank you for coming, and you have to come back.
Oh, I will. I have a number of visits already under.
Good. We would love to have y'all back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like gardening, you'll want to subscribe to this channel. We showcase gardeners, plants, and the joy that growing can bring.